Everyone ready? Max, you good?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right, cool. Hey guys, Gregory Friedberg back with another postseason interview with all of our jury contestants from Survivor Time and Change, Buckeye Battles, our first ever season here in Ohio State. I am here with Max Gentile on Skype from LA, and then Tyler and Jake are with me as well. So we're gonna dive into everything, guys. Dissect your game from start to finish. We got a lot to talk about. So let's get right to it. All right, cool. So first thing I want to ask is, this is obviously a very unique experience that you guys got to have, is being a part of the first season of Survivor Time and Change. It's a very cool thing that I didn't even know what to expect, and neither did you. So I want to talk about your perspective on this whole experience as a whole. Don't talk about the game yet, but just being a part of the experience. So Max, we can start with you.
It was great. I met a whole bunch of people that I probably would never have met. I think I've said that before, like people like Lisa and things like that. Yeah, I mean, like I even told you, Greg, I was like, just thank you for being a part of my life. I think when I saw you out of Ethel one time, it was just something that, it was so new and so, just so much fun, because I love to compete and in everything that I do, so it was perfect.
Cool. Jake?
I think that coming into it, like you said, we all really had no idea what to expect. I mean, you saw other college fan-made survivors, and you kind of saw a little bit what it was like, but to play and to experience it is so different from that. And so coming into it, I think we were all just like, it'll be fun, we'll make friends, whatever. But it was intense. It was very intense, and a lot more so than I think any of us were really expecting. But I think that made it even more rewarding in the end. I think everyone took it very, very seriously, and we really made it fun and such a cool experience. And I say this every time when I post about it and every time when I talk about it, but it's the coolest thing I've done in Ohio State because it's just so different from everything else I've ever done. So it's been really rewarding and really fun.
Yeah, I have to agree with everything you said and everything Max said. It was so unique. It was so different. You can't really even compare it to anything that anyone else has done at Ohio State, really, and that's saying something since it is such a huge university. One thing that I think the experience provided me, something I took out of it, was just the life experience you get out of it that you don't anticipate getting. I said at the end of last season that I can talk about this in interviews for jobs now that I'm a senior looking for full-time employment. Those typical interview questions where it's name a time where you had to deal with controversy, or you had to work with someone who you knew might not like you, with strife or just controversy and stuff like that. And I mean, that's the epitome of a college Survivor game. These people, Greg said it at the very beginning of the season, he wants us to be best friends that vote each other out. And I think all of us really took that to heart. I'm great friends with everyone who I experienced the game with. And you have to work with people who you know are talking crap about you 20 minutes before in a different meeting. But you have to open up doors, you have to be cordial and understand how to work with people, even though there's controversy there, and you can directly correlate that into the real world, the professional world, really in any field of work, so.
All right, so then you guys are a part of this new thing, and another nice part of it is you get this whole series out of it, right? So 300 hours of film, and really probably even more hours of outside that, talking with each other off camera. And all those hours get put in to 12 hours of a YouTube series.
That's crazy.
So,
that's crazy.
Kudos to you.
I want to talk about seeing yourself on screen and how you believe you were received, if you were happy with your edit, things like that. So Max, you want to start off with that?
Yeah, I loved it. Every time I would see myself pop up, I would just get all nervous because I didn't know what I was about to say. But I thought it was funny. It was hilarious every time I would come up on the screen. I would get real close and get a little nervous. I didn't know what I was going to say, what part was in there. But I was really pleased with it. It was fun, and I don't think I came off as bad as I did to the other players on TV.
Cool. Jake?
I was definitely nervous about my edit just because I felt looking at my own game from once I got voted out, I was did I really do anything? Or was I just there? And so it's expecting to look like an idiot, A, or B, like a snake. Well, one of those came true, which is fine. I definitely didn't look as dumb as I expected, but I also feel like I was very critical of myself throughout the game. I was like, wow, I'm not doing good. Wow, I don't have an alliance. Wow, I'm just not doing as good as I should be. So I think I definitely enjoyed it, and I think once I got voted out, I enjoyed the series so much more because I wasn't so worried about, what do I look like? Oh, I look like an idiot. Why am I touching my hair so much? Slow down. Stop talking so fast. But now that when I was watching, once I was voted out, it was just so enjoyable and entertaining. And I get, those last, couple episodes, this is, really fun to watch. And it's cool to see, the other players' gameplay and what they were thinking and their mindsets going into it. And even when it wasn't, I think that was really cool, too.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think it was definitely weird seeing yourself on a computer screen, because none of us are really used to watching ourselves, except for maybe Will. But it was weird. I mean, you couldn't hear me half the times I was talking because I talked so quietly, but it was cool to see to watch other people's reactions. And I did that during the seasons. After I would record something on my laptop or on my phone, I'd go back and take the 20 or 30 minutes to actually rewatch that conversation to see the other person's facial expressions when I'd say something and I wasn't looking at them. But it was even more interesting to see that on the show, to see what was actually chosen to be put on, because oftentimes it was things that obviously were important at the time, but I didn't necessarily think were super important. So I'd just be able to see people's reaction, and watching other people was more interesting than watching myself.
So then let's talk about the other people who played, because you get to watch yourself, but you also get to see games that maybe you didn't understand as well. So who surprised you the most? Who do you think lived exactly up to the potential that you thought they were going to be at with the series? Going anywhere.
I think that in the game, I really underestimated Kelsey. I definitely didn't, I think the way that we kind of portrayed it as the two pairs, one was dominating, one was kind of lagging behind. So I think the Murray and Jackson pair, I never really saw the dominating, lagging thing as much as everyone else did. But the Allie and Kelsey thing, I thought Allie was the ringleader. She was totally in charge, and Kelsey was her lackey, and she was just using her to get to final three. And so watching back and seeing Kelsey was the reason I went home, and Kelsey did a lot of things in that alliance with Vinny and Allie, a lot more than I knew about, just because my conversations with Kelsey were very surface level, but I think that was on purpose, because she didn't really need me and she didn't want me, which was fine. But she did a lot in that game that I didn't know about or didn't expect, so I think she definitely surprised me the most. And I think Murray definitely lived up to her potential there. Murray definitely she dominated in a lot of ways that I kind of already knew from week 3, but I think that she definitely lived up to her potential, but Kelsey definitely surprised me the most.
I'd have to say Lisa actually surprised me a lot, since I was never on a tribe with Lisa, and since getting to know Lisa, she's such a cool person, even though she likes pineapple on her pizza. But she surprised me a lot with I knew she was sassy, but I didn't know she was sassy. And Vinny also surprised me. I knew, I thought we would work together till the very end, because we were very similar people outside of the game, but in the game we couldn't be any opposite. He had no problem being, I'll use my line, a sleazy teammate, shaking people's hands left and right, promising final twos with literally everyone in the game, and apparently except for Max. And yeah, Vinny just shocked me. I was anticipating everyone to bring a little bit of themselves into the game, and Vinny just didn't at all.
Max, what about you?
I would say, I think I really underestimated Allie and Kelsey, but that was because I was putting it all on Muriel, and that comes true in the show, or it's in the edit. That I was saying Muriel and Jackson the whole time, But I think Allie and Kelsey, they played a great game. I had no idea. They didn't really, let me in on any of it. Whether that was my fault of my own or whatever. But I was really impressed at how they played.
Yeah. So now you guys are the first 3 members of the jury. And with that, you get an interesting experience, because I think more than anyone, you guys have to see the game develop from the sideline. And every time someone gets voted out, you would be able to talk about it together. So from Max, and we'll go to Tyler and then Jake, what was it like being on the jury and getting more of the story each week?
It made it a lot more enjoyable. You know what I mean? Because I wasn't trying to follow my own story, trying to make my own story. So, you know, it was nice to just sit back and you hear a little bit more. You hear a little bit more every week. And that was the best part about it, because it's not like you were directly forced into it anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I made that comment at the Final Tribal Council when I addressed Muri, is week after week, as people get voted out, you learn so much more about the game because you're not in it for a couple weeks. And then College Survivor, it really is a couple weeks. It's not like a couple days in the real game. And I found out a lot about Allie's game as soon as I found out at, I think, Vinny's vote or Will's vote that Allie knew it was Muri who pitted us together. I was like, you go, girl, because I knew that for maybe like a couple days. And it sounds funny, a couple days, because I really had no idea it was Muri who did that. But yeah, you get to, your opinions change of people for the better and for the worse, and it just happens to be that whoever gets voted out that week, whoever treated them poorly in the game, they shape their opinion.
I also think I echo what they both said, but also like, I know that I was a very paranoid player in the game, and I was like, everyone's working like in these weird pairs or like these weird alliances. I think like actually having like the reality of the situation being brought every week, it wasn't like when people got voted out, they were still lying. Like
Yeah.
you were really finding out who they were actually working with, what they actually thought, who they were voting out, like who they went to go with to the end. So it was like reality based. It wasn't just like my crazy mind telling me that Allie and Muri are final too. Like those things weren't real. And I think like seeing the reality of the game definitely was a relief, but also was very interesting. It like helped inform the final decision, and I think that was pretty enjoyable.
Cool. So, in a one-word answer, I want from all of you, who were you rooting for immediately after you were voted off, regardless of whether or not they made it to final two? So, Max, you had 8 people to choose from. Who were you rooting for?
Jake.
Hey.
Hey.
Nice.
You're not just saying that because he's in the room.
I'm saying that because he was the only one who was with me at that final tribal.
That's true.
All right.
Jackson.
I want to say Vinny at the time, because I thought that Will was the one that voted me out and not Vinny. So I thought Vinny, but then once I figured out Vinny was the one, then I switched it to Will. But they're Will, so it didn't matter.
Cool. So now I want to take, we've talked a lot about the end game and how you guys are a part of the end game, but I mean, you had to get there somehow. So let's talk a lot about pre-merge, because especially for Max, that's where the majority of the game was played very aggressively, let me say, which was so fun to watch. So Max, you get pinned on day 1 as a captain, and you have the choice to choose the people you're going to play with. So when you get nominated as a captain, and we saw this a little bit in the show, you weren't the most excited about it in the world, but having to choose your destiny, what did that kind of feel like?
Well, I mean, it's definitely easier to be the first pick than to pick her, because I think me picking Emma, like, already, like, she's like, well, you didn't pick me last, or he didn't pick me, so I'm gonna go get him. You know, whatever. I never really wanted to be the captain, not because I don't like leadership roles, it's just more so because I knew the kind of target that would put on my back, and that's immediately why I drafted Will, because I knew that, you know, he would have an equal one just as bigger as I did, but you know, I mean, I'm happy they elected me as captain, I guess. I don't know what that tells you, but maybe they were trying to get me out first just from the first few moments, I don't know.
It's cool. So then, additionally to that, Tyler, you're the first overall pick. Lauren picks you. And with that, I don't want to so much talk about being drafted first. I want to talk about the people that you ended up working with on that tribe, because what we've seen is that you basically formed the first large alliance in Survivor Time and Change history, right? With the Savage Six. You were the person pulling the strings for those people to come together. So talk about forming the Savage Six in that Kilabu tribe.
Yeah, as Lauren was picking people, it was almost surreal, like out-of-body experience, because it is exactly who I was going to be picking. And I'm not just saying that. Lauren picked an awesome team, obviously, because 6 of the final 8 were Kilabu, and unfortunately she picked the people that led to her demise. But I went back and watched some footage from the game a couple weeks ago, and I formed that Savage Six on day 4. And I wasn't in the game for a long time, but I think my perception of people was pretty good to be able to pick out those 6 competitors right away. And I knew I wanted an alliance with 3 guys and 3 girls. And Jackson and Vinny obviously were obvious picks because me and Andrew didn't really see eye to eye. And then originally I did choose Lauren. Jackson chose Muri and Vinny chose Kelsey. So originally, Allie wasn't even supposed to be in the Savage Six. I think in the end that wouldn't have actually worked because Kelsey would have kept Allie in the loop on everything, and the Savage Six probably wouldn't have lasted as long as it did, because it would have been known that Allie was our next target, and Kelsey wouldn't have let that happen. But it would. Those 5 other people are all awesome. I love them so much. We've hung out a few times since the season ended. We were just at my house a couple weeks ago hanging out. But the 6 of us, I think, we're all such gamers that had we gotten down in the final 6 like I wanted to, it would have been the most stressful week of my life.
Right, because you were so close. And I think one of the dynamics that maybe you guys didn't get to see on Savage 6 was an alliance that both Max and Jake were a part of. And probably because you guys went to tribal so much, probably one of the stronger alliances that formed in the game. That whether or not it was screwed over by a swap, Jake, I want you to talk about that core alliance of you, Max, Elizabeth, and Will.
Well, we started pretty much from day one without Max, but then Max was quickly added like in the first couple days. But it was kind of an alliance out of necessity just because we lost the first challenge and we were just walking back. It was me, Elizabeth, and Will were just walking home, and so we just started talking and we were like, well, this works, I guess. But then it ended up being really beneficial. I think we were all like very serious about the game. I think we all had different perspectives, but we also brought something to the table when it came to the 4 of us. And we were like super tight. So come tribe swap, we were like, we just got to make this merge. Like the 4 of us have to make the merge. We'll be good if we make it, and we'll dominate once we get there. And of course, the way that tribe swap worked out, that didn't happen necessarily. And I mean, you could always say like, well, what if this happened? Like, what if I was on the tribe instead of Max? Or what if Will would have been on the other side and Max would have been with me? Like, things would have been totally different, but you can't really put a lot of thought to that because that's not what happened. I do think that had we made it to merge, I think that we would have been able to do something because I think we were very committed. And I think, unfortunately, because Will was with me, I think Will trusted me the least out of the 4 of them. And then that just kind of led to like tension on our tribe, but then equally because Max and Elizabeth were close on that tribe, that put a target on their backs because it was obvious that they were closer to each other than to Lisa. But I definitely like love the 4 of them, and I'm glad that I worked with them. Had we made it farther, it would have been better, but I'm like glad I stuck to my guns and stuck to my lines.
No,
It would have been fine. I thought Elizabeth was with you.
All right, so let's bring up a name there that I think all 3 of you can relate to. So I want to talk about Elizabeth because, so Elizabeth, who is living in LA now, actually right around the corner from Max, and like, it's cool because you guys all had a connection, whether or not you knew it from the beginning. Tyler and Elizabeth knew each other from casting. And then you guys were in this alliance with her, and you guys go to the swap, and we just talked about how strong an alliance was. And then that first vote, Max, you get screwed over, and you're left out of the loop on that vote. So seeing Elizabeth go, talk about that.
Well, I'm actually seeing Elizabeth on Friday. She's having a housewarming party here. I was just texting her last night.
Good.
So, I know. But, yeah, I mean, that was terrible. That was like the worst thing that happened because, I'm like, okay, well, we'll get Lisa here and, me and Els will try and regroup next week and, maybe we can swing one of them back over this way, even Andrew for that matter. And that was devastating. And I think that really showed how frustrated I was in the show. And I kind of wish that, I was very new at Survivor when I, played. And since I'm like, I understand the game now, I can't get that, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, it sucked she got voted out. That was my closest alliance. But I mean, I got to just pick the pieces up, and nothing's personal. You know what I mean? I can't hold, personal vendettas like I did because I was so upset about it.
Right. So then you guys hear the news afterwards because you're on the other side. So Tyler, you keep reacting. I want to ask you first because this is an alliance that a lot of people, especially like once people were watching this series, they're all like, this is cool. It's a cross-tribal alliance. I want to see where this goes. And then the rug just gets yanked from under you guys. So talk about hearing about that vote.
Yeah, so me and Elizabeth met at casting, and right after casting, we stayed outside the building and spoke for like 45 minutes in the rain, just talking. And we actually met up like 4 times before the season actually started, just to like talk about life. We really didn't even talk about the game or strategy that much, but we were really close, and I think we would have made it far. But at Emma's vote, Elizabeth texted me like, "Oh, I'm out," and I was like, "No, you're not." And she was like, "Yeah, I'm not." And she was joking with me. And then just 3 weeks later, she texted me, "Oh, hey, I'm out." And so I didn't believe her. I went probably 4 hours thinking she was lying to me, and then she shot me a text and said, "No, like, I'm actually out. We can't talk anymore. Good luck." And I was like, "What?" I thought that they found out about us for sure. I thought I was next. I spent those next few weeks in absolute paranoia because nobody was saying anything. Nobody from original Kelabu told me that was happening, and nobody from original Kelabu told me once it did happen. So I had to totally rethink my game plan because I was really, really planning on trying to flip Elizabeth to Kelabu and then picking off Mera one by one. Thankfully, they did that to themselves. But once Elizabeth was with Kelabu, I was planning on taking Jackson and Muriel plus Elizabeth, and then boom, that 4 is the final 4. Knock out Jackson and Muriel, and then have me and Elizabeth be final 2.
So Jake, you heard about that news and you were devastated.
Of course, yeah. I think we actually found out together. We were meeting in Scott, and like we got the text, or I got the text that morning, and then like
we found out the same morning and met.
Yeah. So like I was devastated, especially because in that core 4 in Mara, like I think that Will and Max were definitely a pair, and then Elizabeth and I were a pair. Even though like we were 4 together, I think those pairs were kind of clear. So once Elizabeth went, that was like my number 1 at that point. And so once I found out, I was like heartbroken, just because like she was such a cool person, such a like interesting person to get to know. Her life is just so incredible. Like she's such a cool person to have around. But then also like because in the game, like we were a 2. And then she got kicked off, and I was like, "What did I do? Like, it was my fault. Like, or like, what am I gonna do now? Like, what's my plan moving forward?" Because even at merge, like, if it's just me, Max, and Will, like, if we get to final 3, those 2 would inevitably pick me off, and like my chances of winning a final immunity challenge probably aren't that great. But I definitely think it was devastating. But again, you just kind of have to pick up the pieces and move forward.
So then I want to talk about 2 other moments pre-merge. One focuses on you, Max, the other with kind of both of you indirectly. So Max, after Elizabeth goes home, it's very obvious, you're on the bottom, right? So you have 2 votes to get through because with that, Lisa goes home and Andrew goes home in the end, but you had 2 votes to get through. So talk about the frustration of knowing that you're on the outs. There really wasn't much that you could do to get around it. But the frustration of knowing you weren't at the merge yet and you just had to survive.
Yeah, honestly, that was so trying because I just felt like I was in a great position before the swap, and then the swap happens, and I find myself on the outs versus being the only guy. And then for some reason I was spared that first week, and then the second week, the whole idol situation, and let's not forget here, like Muriel was gone, she was gone. They weren't splitting that vote, she was gone. And then until Andrew messed that up, and then I think Andrew sealed his own fate, by being such a rat, the greatest term, survivor. But and I knew I had to come out there and put everything on the line. Just watching the focus, that I had during the Talisman Challenge, it was just unreal because I knew it's win or go home, and that's just part of what gets me up at 5:30 a.m. to go work out. It's in my DNA.
So, and it was a lot of fun to watch that because I think Max, and objectively speaking, people started rooting for him in that moment because he becomes this massive underdog. Not only is he on the outside of the votes, but he's also on the outside being one of the only Mayras remaining, with Lisa having flipped on him, being the only guy. And then Andrew comes in, and Andrew and Max don't have the best relationship. And so it's very fun to watch the evolution of Max getting to the merge because all it was fight. On the other side of the coin, we have that challenge had other implications on Kelabu because both tribes contemplated throwing the challenge. Now, we throw in a little twist that says, hey, you can't throw this challenge because if you do, then someone else that you might not want to win individual immunity will win it. That just so happens that happened on both tribes. So, Max wins immunity, Jackson wins immunity. And I want to talk about this with both of you because at the time, he was going home. And that is because of a conversation he had with you. So let's talk about that because it's one of the most interesting conversations of the entire game.
Because we went into that conversation, and I think it was just kind of like I don't know anyone on Kalabu, so let's just get to meet someone. I just picked Jackson randomly. It wasn't like I was like intentionally like, Jackson's the one I need to talk to. So like when I went to the conversation, I expected surface level. I expected like, hi, my name's Jackson. I'm on Kalabu. I'm not going to tell you anything. So when that wasn't the case, and when he was very like, here's my plan. Like I want Will out, and then I want Tyler, and then I want Vinny, and I want to work with you to the end. And I was like, oh, okay. Like I was like, what just happened? And I was like reeling. I'm like, okay. And so then taking that, I was like, well, this is good, I guess, because I had a couple options there, but my heart was still with Marah, and I was like, Marah to the end. So I was like, this would work to kind of pit Kalabu against each other. I was like, if I go to Vinny, and if I go to Tyler, and I tell them, hey, listen to what Jackson told me in our first meeting ever, like, is that someone you really want to trust to the end? I thought that would really work. And it did, because everyone was willing. I think Vinny was especially, I think you were too, kind of like, okay, like recontemplating that relationship. And then Vinny was to the point where he would have thrown a challenge. I didn't think you not as much, but I think Vinny definitely would have. And I think if Jackson would have lost, would have you voted for Jackson?
No.
You wouldn't have, okay.
It wouldn't matter.
It wouldn't have mattered if you sort of had pulled.
Right.
But so when Jackson wins, I'm like, crap. Like I'm like, shit. Because like that was my whole thing in New Kalabu was let's get Jackson out so at least we come in to merge with all three Marah still in. And so when that didn't happen and Jackson won, it was just kind of an oh shit moment. So then having those conversations where everyone's like, yeah, Cal, but then Tyler and Jackson told me separate saying like, let's actually do Will. I really didn't. Yeah, we'll get there, but yeah. So, I mean, it was just threw a huge wrench in the plan, I guess, when Jackson ended up winning.
So, and then another very pivotal conversation of the game happened that same week, because we see, when you bring it up in Final Tribal Council, the conversation where Tyler takes his jacket off and says, this is going to be a hard conversation. And you guys talk about having heard Jackson say, you guys are threats, I want you out. So talk about that.
That conversation I know needed to happen. I didn't know it was going to have to happen that soon in the game. But it was a good move by Jake. It led to a lot of actual, like, indirectly, which I don't think that you know, led to a lot of game-changing conversations. First of which, even before that conversation with Jackson, was a conversation I had with Vinny. That's where kind of my strife with Vinny really begins, is he was in my living room, we looked at each other dead in the eye and said, conversation out of the game. And we had a conversation about life, we had a conversation about like our faith, and we just talked about life. And at the end of the conversation, we shook each other, like literally shook each other with our hands, which means a lot to me. Looked each other in the eyes and said, I'm not voting you out, let's get to the end in this thing. And I meant it at the time because I didn't have Elizabeth anymore. So me and Vinny were working together at that point as far as I knew. And then I realized I don't see a path to the end without Jackson, so I sat down with Jackson, I said, this is gonna be hard, but we need to have this conversation. And I literally confronted him on everything in the game that happened up to that point. You don't see everything in the edit, but the important parts were there. And I could tell that Jackson was so nervous, so nervous, even though he had no reason to be because he was going home, that I knew he was telling me the truth. He shook me in the hands like 2 times, and yeah, that was super important because I felt like I had a little bit of power over Jackson right there. And at the end of the day, Jackson's able to claim I was able to reel Vinny and Tyler back in and vote with me. Like, yeah, he did that. That was huge on his part. But at the same time, I think I had a little bit of power over him because I was able to blow up his game at any point. Because maybe I bought it, maybe I didn't. And I did.
Right. So, bringing all of you guys back in here, there's 2 people that keep coming up in this conversation, right? Max is on a tribe with Muriel. You guys are on a tribe with Jackson. And these 2 became targets very early. And you said it at Final Tribal Council. I knew you guys were trouble from week 3. And it turns out they were. Because at the end of the day, you guys are looking at them on the jury bench as final two. And it's very interesting to see that the primary reason that Max targets Muriel is because he wanted Jackson out. And Muriel was Jackson's second-hand person. So, let's talk about why, Max, you talked all about Andrew being a rat. You didn't want to be being around, but you're still going to vote Muriel.
Yeah, a lot of that was just for show. I mean, I ended up I did vote for the rat. You know, I wasn't missing my opportunity with that. But you know, I think Muriel and I just kind of spiraled into like this thing. Well, I'm not working with her. Well, then let's get her out there. If she's going to be like that, you know, and I think she kind of just felt the same for me. So I mean, really, it was, you know, more for just let's just get Muriel because it's Muriel more so than like, all right, I'll vote for Andrew this week, but I still want Muriel out, you know.
Right. So then we have an interesting vote after, and the Andrew vote was very predictable. Let's be honest, it was unanimous. But we look on the other side, and I think a very questionable decision gets made that a lot of people have said to Jake and to Will. Why didn't you vote out Tyler? Why didn't you vote out Vinny?
Still don't know.
So let's talk about that.
So when I had my conversation with you, Tyler, and Jackson about voting out Will, I was kind of submitted to it as like, I think this makes the most sense. I don't know how much Will trusts me. But then I said it and I meant it, but I also like was partially lying when I was like, I got nervous at Tribal Council. I'm like, this could be the stupidest thing I've ever done because he's in my core 4 alliance. Like he was still part of that 4 alliance. So going into merge with just Max, who I hadn't really worked with that much up to that point, I was like, that's a very risky move to go into with Cal, who put my name down, and Max, and then no one else. I was like, I don't know if this makes sense to me. So then at Tribal, I was like, I can't do this. Like, I've got to tell Will. So, because like at that point, I kind of got suspicion because he was very comfortable at the idol. He was like very much like, yeah, I wonder where the idol is. But it was like very like acting, like you could tell that he was like, it wasn't very legitimate. Like, oh, I really have been looking for the idol. So I was like, maybe he has it. I was like, if you have it, play it. And then we were trying to like read each other's lips. I didn't want you to go at that point because I thought that we were working together and I thought that like I wanted to keep you, but I knew that Max and Will didn't want you to stay and they wanted you to go home. But I didn't want that, so I was like, let's go Vinny, but then he was saying, let's go Tyler. But we both couldn't read each other's lips, so we're like, shit, like what do I put? I'm like, I guess Cal. I was like, that's the only other name that we talked about. So I'm glad we both landed on Cal because otherwise it would have been a 1-1-1 tie with my name being one of those. And then going into a revote, I don't know what would have happened at that point. I probably would have gone home. For like telling Will to play the idol, I would have gone home. So I was like, thank God, like we both landed on the same name. But I was just like, shit, like this is stupid. Because if I would have had an hour more to talk about it with Will and say, let's do this, like I'm saving you right now, let's go Vinny. Because at that point, I also wasn't really comfortable with the Will and Vinny thing. Because they were way close because they had talked before the game. And I knew that because like Vinny's a huge Survivor fan, so of course they talked beforehand. So I was like, I don't like that because I need Will, and I know Vinny's using Will in the same way I wanted to use Will. So if I can get rid of that, that would have been good. And at that point, I really did trust you, Tyler. So I was like, I can't vote Tyler out. So I was like, it has to be Vinny because Jackson had immunity. So we both just couldn't coordinate that. Like it was just like a lot of moving parts that we couldn't figure out because it was so last second, and we just landed on Cal. And looking back, like that's the stupidest move I could have made because then that caused you and Vinny and Jackson to not trust me anymore. And I didn't realize at that point how much Jackson would have been willing to work with me because I thought that it was just fake. Because again, it was the very first meeting. I'm like, this has to be fake. There's no way it can be real. And I think he said that at Final Tribal. It was like the worst move in the game was me telling Will that because he did want to work with me. Not making the jump to Calabo was the dumbest thing I could have done. But at that time, again, I was like diehard Mara, and I also thought that there was no way they would take me farther than 7 if I would have jumped to Calabo.
At that point, I didn't. Immediately after Tribal, there's this amazing confessional that I filmed with Jill that was not in it, and it was so sad. But I thought Vinny told Will to do it, and my whole world came crumbling down. I was like, I'm never gonna win the game, and my path to winning got so much harder. I was freaking out, and then, so I still didn't know it was you until later that night. I get a FaceTime from Jackson, and it's Jackson and Vinny cackling, howling like hyenas on the other side of the phone, and I'm like, my heart dropped. I was like, okay, now I have no allies because Jackson's just with the guy who told Will to play his idol, and I'm like, why are you with him? And Vinny was like, so hurt, like a little, like I don't even know why he was so hurt because I mean it's a fair assumption, but. Yeah, I was so shocked. I had no idea, and then when I found out it was you, I was like, Jake, no, like we could have done so much together, but I mean, I probably still wouldn't have won.
All right, so one other name that gets brought up again between all three of you, we talked about Elizabeth. I think another person who's in the middle of all of you guys is Will. And I want to talk about someone who is probably the closest with Will, being Max. That relationship was one of the more interesting in the game because it's two people who are threats for very different reasons. Because you look at Will, he's played the game before. He understands the social, the strategic mind of the game. You look at Max. Max is a very big physical threat. Max also, surprisingly enough, had a very good social game and a very good strategic game with that core four, right?
So, I was going to say, so with that core four.
Okay, so, besides the point, we have Max and Will team up. So, why Will being your number one? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, well, I think I said, Will had played the game, and I really had no experience in it other than, watching a casual couple couple seasons. I was never like a big super fan. And so I kind of just need someone to be my strategic mind for a little bit until I got my feet wet, you know what I mean? And then, it came naturally just as I thought it would. And, when Bo was on the other tribe, it was kind of like, we're cool, but not that cool now, Mm-hmm. And like I said, I picked Will first because I knew, he would have a target on his back, and he did. Like, there was people gunning for him as soon as he walked in there. So I think that helped a lot. And, I watched Will's seasons, Millennial versus Gen X, and then I watched him do exactly what he did to me to, two other guys on that show. So, I just wish I would have been a little bit smarter, but I think Will played a great game, and he was the best main alliance I could have had, I think.
Okay. So then, Jake, there was a lot that was cut from the edit, I know, in terms of your speculation of Will, Will's speculation of you. It was one of the most dysfunctional relationships in the game because despite the fact that you both outwardly didn't trust each other and you always told people, I don't trust Jake, I don't trust Will, you had to tell him about the idol, right? Play your idol. You also you vote with him in Final 9. You're left out of the vote against Max when Will votes against Max. And we'll get to that, Max, because I want to talk about that too, but talk about that relationship.
I really can't even put words to describe how weird that relationship is. Because going into it, I kind of knew that working with Will would be it's a double-edged sword because he does have that experience, and so that makes him target. But it's also I don't know how much I could trust him because we saw what he did in Millennials versus Gen X too. Wasn't it?
Jay,
yeah, as I forgot his name. But so that, and it's funny because my biggest alliance was actually my mom, which sounds dumb, but we would always talk about the game, and I was like, Will's in this game, I think I want to work with him. She's like, don't you ever work with Will. And she's like, don't trust him, he's a rat. I'm like, you don't know him, he's super nice. And my mom was the smartest person in the game because she knew right away that he was a rat. I'm like, it's fine. But I still wanted to work with Will just because I thought it made sense at the time. And we just never, we were always at odds, but we always just ended up back together because it was we only have each other now, so I kind of have to lean on him a lot more than I would have otherwise. And especially the tribe swap, of the four, the last person I wanted to be split up with was Will. And I would have much rather had Elizabeth or Max at that point, just because Will I never really fully trusted. So telling him about the idol was partially just because I didn't know what made the most sense for me moving into the merge, and not having Will didn't add up to me, but it was kind of a show of trust because I know he didn't trust me that much, and it did work a little bit, but I still think on the whole he never really trusted me, obviously because the next freaking vote he left me in the dark, and I was so mad about that because I literally stuck my neck out for him at that vote, and then the literal next vote, not only did he vote up Max, which at that point I really wanted to work with Max, but then also he left me in the dark, and then to make matters worse, he went to Jackson and Murray and was like, it wasn't me that voted for Jackson, it was Jake, and then he walked away. I was like, literally, you just destroyed my game. Thank you for doing that. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Alliance member. So it was just like we never really worked well together, but we had to work together because we just kind of forced ourselves into that. Especially, I think I forced myself to be clung to Will a lot more than I should have, just because that idol play like forced me to be his like number one alliance at that point for myself.
So I want to take this conversation in a different direction for Tyler, because at the time, we get to the merge, and I think from the outside looking in, you can look at Max's elimination as, oh, he's a big physical threat, let's just get him out at 9, easy merge boot. It wasn't that simple, because at the time, and you see this in the episodes, there was a clear you, Will, Max. Vinny, Allie, and Kelsey were completely in the middle, because on the other side you have you, Jackson, Murray, and they were just trying to make a decision, and it was very evident that because of what Murray did, and we're going to talk about this in a little bit, but Murray pits you against Allie, and vice versa, and Allie wanted you out, and I think the consensus, especially with Vinny kind of taking emotion out of the game, Vinny was on board with that, and I think so was Kelsey at the end of the day, and we'll talk about the Cat Alliance too, but you win immunity there, and it complicates the vote. Because I do believe that you may have gone home at Final 9 had you not won it. But at the time, did you ever consider that?
Going home at 9? No! I was like, oh man, I'm good. I'm gonna get 6th place, or 5th place, or 4th place. I knew I probably wasn't gonna make it to the end until, ironically, the following week when I did go home. That's the first time I saw a path to the end. But I just like really wanted to win an individual immunity because I think my skills in the game are my social game and my physical game. I'm not the most strategic, but physically and socially, I think I'm a dominant player. And so I just wanted to win, so I won. And then Kelsey tells me, oh, Tyler, like, you really needed to win. She kind of told me, and you get my reaction to her telling me that in the edit, but she explicitly told me, Tyler, you needed to win or you were going home. I don't know, I haven't talked to her about it since, that if she really meant to tell me that, because obviously I then know there's 5 people who are against me, and obviously those are probably the 3 Mayra and 2 of the Kailabu, and at that point I thought it was probably Vinny and Allie since Kelsey told me that. But yeah, I had no idea it was me next, and then when I didn't win the next week, I knew it was me. At the Touchy Subjects Challenge, Jake and Will are sitting right next to me, and I hear them go, oh, we have to get Tyler first. And I look at them and I'm like, I'm sitting right next to you, I can hear you. And then as soon as I get my X's, and then as soon as the first Kailabu person gives me an X, I'm like, I'm done, my game's over. I knew I was going home. And you even see like my little walk up to the building that I was voted out in. If you like pause it right at the right time, you get me looking at the camera and making like a really sad face because I knew like there's nothing I can do.
Right. So let's jump back a vote, because I don't want to skip over Max here. Max, Final 9 is not a tribal council that you probably look very highly on. So let's talk about going into it. You were very confident that you had numbers against Jackson, right? So
I'm confident all the time.
Right. So did you feel like that plan was actually going to go through though, or did you think that once Tyler won that it might be a little bit more complicated?
Yeah, once Tyler won, I knew it wasn't happening. However, I didn't think Will would flip against me. That was one thing that I think shocked me. And you know, I say it all the time. If just one of them would have approached me or approached Jake, I know we both would have wrote his name down. But you know, they didn't, and that's all we got.
Right. So it was a lot more complicated of a vote than I think people perceived it to be. And then moving on, and I talked about this with Kelsey and Allie, and I'm planning on talking about it with Vinny and Will just because of how critical of a role they played in the next vote. Because at that next vote, the first 2 people out of touchy subjects are Jake and Will. And with that, you'd think they're on the bottom, they gotta go. But it was all about kind of creating a scene for Jackson, for Murray to see like, oh yeah, they're next. but it wasn't the case. So let's talk about that next vote, and we'll get your feelings on it in a second. But Jake, once Tyler doesn't win immunity, do you think that we got it?
Not necessarily, but I was hopeful. Just because at that point I knew the week before that Tyler's name was out there, and then once he won, then it was like, oh shit, like there's like basically no way that like one of the three of us wasn't going home, and at that point Max did go. But that next week, Allie was just very much like, I wanted to work with her, but she just would not talk. And I think that, I don't know how evident that is on the show, but like I think everyone would echo, like when you met with Allie, like she had a mission and she would not tell any more than she had to, and she knew what she was gonna say. And she was very smart in that way because I was much of a blabbermouth. I definitely talked too much, where she didn't talk enough, but that also caused some mistrust there. So I didn't know that Tyler was for sure until probably like the day before or the day of. And I think it was the day of when she called and was like, hey, it's like actually Tyler, let's do it. And so at that point I was like, okay, like I have no other choice, so like this is what I'm gonna do. So I was, even though I voted the right way, I was still basically left out of the vote because that decision was on like Vinny, Kelsey, and Allie to make. And then Will and I just sort of like, any option that's not us, I'm happy with. So at that point, we were good with it. So I was pretty sure that it wasn't going to be me because I thought between me and Will, like they would have picked Will or Tyler if Tyler didn't win, and then we didn't win. I kind of figured that made sense.
And then I want to talk about that before I get to you, Tyler. Just Max, this is the first vote that you get to see from the sideline, and I want to ask of anyone that was going to follow you, did you think it would be Tyler?
Well, I did know that Tyler was on the block the week that I went home, so I was thinking, I was like, I mean, this time must be soon, you know, if those girls were right to the flipping, the girls were Vinny. Yeah, you know, I kind of expected I would see him soon, and then I knew my other morale people would be joining there as well. I would say, you know, and based on the information that I would get a little bit more every day, it was kind of obvious that, like, you know, who would be going home next, I think.
Cool. Max, before I get to my directed questions, is there anything that like I haven't touched on that you want to make sure you touch on your gameplay? For example, maybe the Jackson call out or like things like that stuck out to you pre or post merge that you want to talk about?
I mean, the Jackson call out definitely goes down to something I won't forget. I mean, he was heated. I was heated too because I was like kind of put on the spot. Like, what? Like, are you kidding me right now? But that was fine. I mean, I ended up voting for him. You know, it's water under the bridge, whatever. I would just say, you know, and I got nothing but love for everybody. I want that to be clear. I have no issues with anyone, no personal problems, but yeah.
All right, cool. And then I want to get like your opinion on some things just before you go. So we have you guys sitting on the jury. You get the full story, and then we get to the final two, and it's Jackson and it's Murray. And I want you to talk about why you voted the way you did, and if when you voted, did you believe that Jackson was going to win, or did you think you were casting this vote, but you would still lose?
Yeah, I definitely thought Jackson was not winning. I think I even said that in like where I held up the vote, and when I actually voted for him, I was like, I don't know if you're going to win, but you know, here's nothing. But I think I voted for Jackson over Muriel just because, you know, I played with Muriel. I know how she operates. I know how she, you know, talks to people she doesn't like and talks about people. And, you know, that's okay. That's part of the game. But I just thought Jackson, so the only times I would see them is at tribal council after the game, or whatever I would hear. And when Jackson and I played the immunity idol and got Vinny out, who really I came to dislike, like after I was out, and I like kind of saw Vinny as like, you know, the shot caller, and like me and Vinny had some heart-to-heart conversations, just as I'm sure he did with everybody else. And like that kind of hurt me. So like when Jackson used the idol to get Vinny out, I was kind of like, oh, okay, you know, like good for him. I like that. That's, you know, that's a check in Jackson's book over here. And it just came down to it at the final tribal council. I asked them those questions and I thought about it, and I was just like, you know what? I would rather see Jackson win this game. And that's what I did. I honestly had no idea that, you know, 3 other people would be voting for him.
Cool. So it's funny, you're saying all this about Vinny, and I'm getting the same reactions out of Jake and out of Tyler here that, like, you know, a lot of people came to dislike that kind of gameplay. And I think that as a result, Jackson getting rid of Vinny, to a lot of people, why would you go to Final 5 or Final 4 with 2 pairs? Dumb move, whatever. Well, apparently not, because getting someone out who either A, was perceived to be the strategic mastermind of the game and would floor the vote at the end, great move, or getting rid of someone who was unlikable and who, not only that, would constantly lie to him, right? And constantly lied to all 3 of you. And this is no trash on Vinny. I know Vinny's gonna watch this, but at the end of the day, I think a message to Vinny. 3 members of the jury here who maybe that's not the best gameplay because you left them out of the loop on many votes. And I think at the end of the day, the way that the votes came out, regardless of whether or not 2 of you voted for Jackson and then you voted for Miri, I think that it is a little bit of a great ending because it was such a close vote. But at the end of the day, everyone had different reasons for voting the way they did. And I think, Max, you speaking up about the Vinny vote, that's something that a lot of people didn't see, is that Max respected that. And some people on the jury might have respected that move. I think Will did as well, because Will was rooting for Vinny. And getting out the guy who, like, is the front runner for Will could have been a big move. So, other than that, I wanted to just quick questions for Max. What should the viewers know that they didn't see of your game that you want to say now?
I mean, they saw most of it. They definitely saw the fighting and fighting spirit and competitor I am. But I would say I would like everyone to just know that. I think I left it all out there pretty much. I was naive when I played the game. That's what I would like people to know. Like, there were, looking back, like, yeah, you know what? I should have targeted Allie instead of Muriel and never showed Andrew the idol, and then Allie go, you know what I mean? And then, but you can't think like that. So I just wish I was a lot smarter and that I was new and, I'm getting better.
And 2 more things. Max, I know you're planning on applying for the real show, so I think the answer to this question is a yes. Would you play again? And if so, what would you do differently?
Well, I would definitely play again. And if I did, I would do 2 things. I would focus more on the personal relationship side. I think people really miss that from me. I think that it would have done only good things for my game. But, and also you just realize it's, you don't want to put everything out there about your life, just for everyone. But I would say that, and also, there was one other comment I had. What was the question again?
Just what would you do differently in your game if you were to play again?
Oh, yeah. I would have, like I said, focused on more personal relationships, and I wouldn't have taken things like, not personally, but just so with emotion. I'm an emotional guy, but like, you know what I mean? Like when Lisa flips, I probably would have just let it go. When Andrew did that, I would have just been like, dumb move, Max, you should have showed him. You know what I mean? I would have been less emotional, I think, outward, because that then, like, in turn, like, you see Allie and Kelsey walking back, like, oh my God, like, he's crazy, all this stuff. I'm like, no, I'm not crazy, girl, like, y'all screwed me, but what, you know what I mean?
Cool. And then my last thing is there are people playing now in the 2nd season. There are going to be people playing in seasons down the road. And I want to know what your biggest piece of advice to those people playing now and in the future would be.
Just be real and keep it fun, because you'll go insane if you don't. And, the best thing is, I think you always say, the game is what you make it. So when you're in there in your room and you're doing a confessional, have fun with it and be real and, tell everybody exactly what you're feeling. Don't hold back.
Cool. All right, do you have anything else, Max, that you want to say? This is your last opportunity to kind of close the book on season 1 for you. Go for it.
Yeah, just thank you. It was great. I loved it. I'm going to try out for the real one. I've, developed a more keen eye for the strategic part of the game. That's the most important, and I really missed the boat on that. Or the strategic and social part. I guess there's 3 prongs there. But I would say, though, that had everyone enjoyed it. I had so much fun, and I can't wait to be just. I feel like I'm a part of this forever, even though I'm halfway across the country.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Max, for joining us. Sorry that we had to cut it short, but enjoy your workout. And
I'm good.
yeah, I'll see you soon, bud.
Later.
See ya.
See you next.
All right, so I just wanted to get some of the questions out of the way because Max had somewhere to be. But with that, I want to, ending the questions for Max, we have a little bit more time to kind of focus on what happened afterwards, because I think there's a lot to talk about, despite the fact it was really only 2 votes. So, Tyler, something we didn't touch on yet was with your elimination, kind of the big thing that gets the reason you go home is indirectly because of one of your allies. Because we see Muri, who, regardless of whether or not what she thinks of you in the game, she pitted you against Allie. Allie pitted you, Allie was pitted against you, and that led to your demise, despite the fact Muri voted with you at that tribal council. So talk about your elimination.
So the week that I was eliminated, like I said before, I knew I was going home. When Jake doesn't reach out to you at all during a week, you know you're going home. Because Jake, you're always checking in with people, which I do too. I always check in with people. And I didn't get a phone call from Jake or a text for a meeting all week, so I was like, okay, I lost his vote. I knew Will wasn't gonna vote with me. Vinny, I knew I didn't have Vinny the day before the vote. And that is what it is. Allie and Kelsey, I was a little disappointed that they believed that all these lies that Muri was spewing, that I was fake and that I hated them. Yeah, I didn't want to go to the end with them because I knew I'd lose against them. But I didn't hate them, and I sure as hell wasn't fake. So I was just dazed and confused the whole week. It's this is so dumb. Why is it me? I still don't know why they didn't vote out Jackson or Muriel that week, because I didn't have a pair. I didn't have a solid pair where the other half of my perceived pair trusted me. My perceived pair was Vinny. Vinny clearly wasn't with me ever. But Jackson had Muriel and Muriel had Jackson. Vote out one of them, and then I'm oh shoot. And then my defaulted pair would have to be Muriel or Jackson, whoever was still in the game, and I probably wouldn't have worked with either of them at that point because I knew I'd be 2 against 5. So I would have jumped ship, gone with them, and tried to figure something out. I don't know if it would have worked, but I knew I was going home, but it was so frustrating to me that it was hard to totally do anything.
So then, Jake, you were on the right side of that vote, and you walk out of it, and I remember the confessional was, hey, it's pretty cool, finally, a vote goes my way, right? And so Tyler goes home in one of the more interesting tribal councils of the season, and then the next week, did you ever think that it would be you next in line?
Not initially at all. I thought that everyone was pretty on board with Muri. I thought, or at least I felt that everyone was pretty on board with Muri. I thought it made sense. It was a pair, and this other pair of Allie and Kelsey wouldn't want to go to the end with a pair, with another pair. And I thought Vinny also had some reasons to not want to go with Muri, and Muri was being very aggressive. Muri was very upfront with who she was voting with, and she was a big threat in that way because she was able to be the only one to say I know who I'm voting for, it's Will, and I'll scream it on the mountaintops, and no one else will vote for me because apparently we don't care about voting me out. So I was well, this seems like the week to do it because she didn't win, and you all want to go further, and Will and I are perceived easy votes down the line, whereas Muri and Jackson are a pair, and you have 2 votes that are willing to do that. So I thought, oh, for sure, I'll be fine. And then when Allie and Kelsey stopped reaching out, I think it's the same kind of thing where it's once people stop talking to you as much, it's this is weird. And then I met with Vinny probably 2 hours before Tribal, and I could just tell that he was lying through his teeth. Will didn't see it, but I was he's not being real. And Vinny's yeah, I'm gonna vote with you. It's just gonna be you, me, and Will, like, and we're gonna be voting for Miri, and then the girls will vote for either you or Will. I was like, that doesn't make sense. Why wouldn't they all three be voting together? And so it's like, this is wrong. Like, he's not telling us the truth. And Will's like, I don't know. I'm like, I'm pretty sure it's me. And he's like, we were both like, do either of us have the idol? Can we figure something out? It's like, no, we don't. And so at that point, I was like, kind of just submitted to it. It's like, it was 2 hours before. I'm like, there's no way I can do anything. I'm like, it's like, it just sucked. Because it's like when you're backed up against a wall and you can't do anything because like you don't have anyone to reach out to, that just kind of sucks. But I did think Miri was going home. I thought it made sense, and obviously it did because she made it to final 2. So there was merit in wanting her gone, but whatever, I guess.
And so another thing with that vote, it's interesting because we talk about Allie and the relationships that you guys had with Allie. You talk about how she kept a very closed circle, right? If you weren't in her circle, she wouldn't tell you a lot. And that was very evident with you. And I think eventually, we'll talk about the Cat Alliance and everything, but eventually you fell out of that circle as well. And I think with that, was it interesting, Jake, to find out that it wasn't Allie who initiated your demise, it was Kelsey.
Oh, I did not believe that. I was like, huh? Like,
When did you
Kelsey
find
was,
out?
I found out, like, I think it was when Kelsey went.
Okay.
So I didn't know for the longest time. I was like, oh, well, it was probably Allie. Like, Allie said my name, and then they were just fine with it. But watching it back, I was like, what? I was like, there's no way, because Kelsey and I had been meeting, and Kelsey and I had been, like, because, like, when I was talking with them, I was like, I think me, Kelsey, and Vinny would be a good final 3 for them, because, like, they could potentially, like, vote me out at final 3, but then, like, they both also have an option, like, I'm an easy person to win against. So it's like, this makes sense for both of you. Like, and I thought they were being very like serious back to me. It's like, okay, like this could be something. And so when I was meeting with Kelsey, I'm like, I feel good about this, especially like, after Max like forced us to meet. It was like a weird meeting, just the 3 of us. And I was like, Kelsey, like, can I meet with you like right now? Like, I just like circled the building and came back and I was like, okay, like I feel good about Kelsey. Like, she's a nice girl. Like we relate a lot in different ways. I was like, I feel really good about her. So when I found out that she was the one that put my name out there, and Allie actually wanted to work with me, I was like what? Like screeching the brakes. I'm like, what in the world? Because like now that Allie and I are talking like outside the game, she's like, that was the first week where I wanted to work with you, and that was actually the first week that we had like a legitimate confessional. It was the only time that on the season we met, like the 2 of us together. So like clearly like there was more communication between us. So I was like, oh, this feels good. Like maybe there's something. So just the fact that Kelsey was on the 3 my name out was just like, what?
Let's move on to kind of the same question, because I asked, like, did you ever think for Max that it would be you following? Did you ever think that it would be Jake? Because with you being the first member of the Savage 6 leaving, did you think that alliance would just crumble on itself?
The next week when it was Jake, I was starting to get pissed actually, because I mean, not pissed at you. I was like just mad that why didn't we just get down to the 6? Part of me understands like we didn't get to the 6 because Miri made that great play of pitting us against each other, even though short term it wasn't the best move for her because she was like, whoa, I didn't know he was gonna go home now, but it is what it is, and she worked with it. But when when Jake went home, and then I was like, when Jake went home, I was thinking that final 6, like I should be over there. I could be over there. Mm-hmm. And then when the final 5 was all Kelabu, I was just like, I was looking at them and I said, I have to write down one of these people's name down. Like, I don't want to do that. At the end, I was glad that the 2 options I had, that it wasn't Vinny or Kelsey, but man, I was so shocked that it was Jake and then it was Will and that those 5 Kelabu were there. And it was sad.
Right. I was shocked too. I didn't get it either because I was like, I guess like I was cool with Tyler. I was like, okay, now we're gonna start making moves, and we're like, Kelabu and Mira are dead, and now it's just Afro Duck. But then it was like boom, boom, like it was me and then Will. I was like, then what was the point of that? Like this didn't make sense to me because I was like, if you were like gonna beat Kelabu strong, why was Tyler such a big threat at that point and not at 6? I mean, I do get it because like you were a big social threat and you did have your hand in a lot of pots. I think you said that once in one of the professionals, you have your hands in like every pot. So I think that kind of made sense, but I was like, I thought that like the point of that was like to say like, okay, like now this tribal lines are not really that serious anymore, but then they obviously were because the next 2 votes were like the last 2 were off.
Right. So then you guys get to watch probably the 2 more aggressive tribal councils of the season from the sideline, right? You see Final Six as a surprise tribal council where the presumed target of the week, Allie, wins immunity. And with that, Will follows in your footsteps. And then, like you said, Final Five of whatever Mary threw out, right? You hate this term.
I don't even want to hear it, I'm not going to say it.
The Savage Five. This term gets thrown out because Mary decides to throw it out. I was with the Savage Six, now I'm with the Savage Five. And, it's interesting because you were the one who formed the Savage Six Alliance.
And Lauren formed Kelabu, so.
Right. And it's just very interesting. That dynamic was really interesting to watch because not only it was like two very aggressive tribal councils with people speaking up and calling each other out within Kelabu, but still Will goes home. And it was just like, these people are the most dysfunctional family I've ever seen. Because why vote out Will? So let's talk about the Will vote. Because Will goes home, and I want to know, Jake, were you rooting for him when you left?
Like I said, I was originally rooting for Vinny because at that point I was like, well, it makes sense because Will did this once before, voting against Max to keep himself. So I was like, maybe he voted against me because he thought there was no way and like that Vinny would be serious. But then like I kind of pieced together, like, wait, no, that doesn't make sense. Like Vinny was lying to me. Like it's clearly like the three of them were together. So I was rooting for Will just because he was the last Marah, whatever. Like roll my eyes at that, but he was the last Marah, and he was like technically one of my alliance members, even if we didn't like ever really get our stride as an alliance. But he was my alliance member, so I was rooting for him. And then he sucked at that challenge. He was so bad at that like surprise challenge tribal council combo. It was a 5 person combo, and he missed the third one. It was like you couldn't even remember 3. It was like that's good. So once that happened, I was like, I didn't know that Allie was the target. I don't think any of us really knew because we were out of the game at that point. But I was like, well, okay, bye, Will. So then once Tribal came alive, I was like, oh, Will has a chance. I was like, there's like stuff going on. I was like, this could like happen. Will could go farther. I was like, that's kind of cool. But then when it landed on Will, I was like, all that was for nothing? Okay. So it was a little bit confusing. It was very entertaining to watch. And I think we were all just like freaking out. Like we're like, what? Like we're like, our faces were so stupid. But I was like, it was fun to watch, but I was like, that's kind of like all that hype for just a very predictable vote because he was the odd man out at that point.
I think what might get lost in that tribal though is that Jackson doesn't play the idol for Muri. Mm-hmm. That was a huge move, and that was part of what led to my vote for him is he didn't save his biggest ally in the game at the most up in the air, nobody knew it was going to happen, and the fact that he held it and then was able to secure both of them in the Final Four, that's huge. And I think that gets lost because of the craziness of everyone running around, talking and whispering in people's ear. And Kelsey said this to me, I don't know if she said this in her interview, but we all got together and watched Vinny's vote out, or maybe Will's, I can't remember, but Kelsey said the reason that she didn't end up voting Muriel is because when Muriel turns to her and says, fine, vote me out, but I had your back. And her last plea to that is what saved her life. So both of them made huge moves in that tribal council to save their butts and to end up winning the game in Jackson's case.
Mm-hmm. So, and I think something that also gets, I've said this on camera before, Jackson did have the idol of the tribal council. Yeah. And I made him bring it unintentionally, didn't know that that's what it was for, but I told him it was for confessional. And so he has the idol in his hand, and had he played it, obviously it would have been a waste. I think something else that gets lost in the tribal council, and I don't know how aware you guys are of this, is the reason Allie and Kelsey voted out Will has nothing to do with Muri and Jackson. Mm-hmm. So Jackson whispers in Muri's ear last second because Muri is totally voting Vinny. Yeah. And Jackson says, no, Will. Whispers it to Allie, makes eye contact with Kelsey, says, Will. Before the vote, before everything, Kelsey has suspicion this might be a challenge tribal, right? And they settled on Will. When Vinny gets called out at tribal council, that's when he says, I don't want Will, I want Muri. The girls weren't on board with that change of plan. So they voted with Jackson and Muri unintentionally, which is something else that's really interesting, right?
That is really interesting.
So I don't know if you guys knew that.
I saw it a little bit because there was the confessional with the three of them saying like, if it is a tribal council, like, or the tribal council
Yeah.
after challenge, like, Will's the obvious target just because we don't have time to talk about it. But I did think that it was more like up in the air, I guess, that they laid it on Will. I thought it was just like oh shit, this is out of convenience. And it wasn't like a contingency plan kind of deal. So
Then let's talk about, we get to Final Four. It's two bears against each other. And I think it's a very predictable tie, right? They go 2-2, and Kelsey loses based off information about you guys, right? And little details about the game. And that's what we try to do, is focus on little details, not so much how many votes have been cast, or how many votes have been nullified by idols. What day was this tribal council? I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about your observation skills from the beginning. When did you start playing? So when Kelsey loses that, it's interesting because you vote for Miri, you vote for Jackson in the end, but did Miri kind of gain any kind of leverage with winning that challenge? Did she impress you guys on the jury?
I mean, that wasn't necessarily what went into my vote, but it is fair to say that like she was paying attention. Although I do argue that some of it was because Jackson kind of forced her to pay attention. And you saw how meticulous Jackson was with like that notebook. He like wrote down every day, the vote, who voted for who went home, the challenge, what it was, like what happened, like what tribe won. So like he was being very observational, and because they were so close, it kind of forced her to be observational. And they did study beforehand, and I think that was probably at the hands of Jackson, not necessarily Miri.
Not taking anything away from Yuri, because when you're in that situation, and that was 81 days into the game, I mean, I was exhausted after 45. I can't imagine 81 or 83. So their brains are fried at this point. Like, you're just tired. You're still going through school. You're still trying to have a life outside of Survivor. But Survivor takes up so much. So sitting out and 3 rows behind them, I knew the answer to all those questions. To me, those were really easy questions if you just were alive and not a rock. So Kelsey kind of blew it there because they were all easy, but I do see the brains are just fried. And if you don't study that stuff beforehand, then that's what it is. So to me, it wasn't more like, whoa, Miri, like, you just won that, that's epic. Because yeah, she did, and it was epic, it saved her life in the game. It was more like, that was so easy, how did Kelsey do so poorly?
Cool. So then we go to the final 3, Allie, Jackson, Miri. And we've gone over the scenario of had Jackson won and taken Allie, how would that be different? The scenario of Allie and Miri, highly unlikely, and no one has really brought that up because it probably wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
But with Jackson and Miri being in the final 2, I'm just going to skip right over to that because you guys vote different ways and you had your separate reasons for it. So I just want to hear, now that you can actually talk about it out in the open, your rationale for why you voted the way that you did. And Tyler, you go first.
I voted for Jackson because he was my #1 ally from day one. Like you saw the very first episode, Caleb, we ate dinner together in a dining hall. Me, Vinny, and Jackson left. Vinny drove us home, and that's when 3 Lanky White Guys was formed day 1, night 1. And Jackson was my ally from day 1, so I wanted him to win. I knew Miri was bad-mouthing me the whole time. I knew that she didn't like me for whatever reason. Never gave her any reason not to like me. And you see little things throughout the season that are just like, quite frankly, a little bit rude. And I didn't like that. I didn't want someone who was rude to me, who didn't like me, who might still not like me, I don't know, to like win the game. I wasn't gonna vote for someone who played the game as the exact opposite as I would have played it. Jackson and Miri played a similar game. I'm not saying I played it. Jackson and Miri played a very similar game. I still don't think that I played similarly to Jackson at all. That's not what I'm saying. He was my ally. Miri was my ally for a little bit in the game, and when
by association.
Yeah, when I was in the game, I wanted to go to the Final Four with her because at that time I was ignorant to the fact that she hated me. So when I found that out, and that's I think what led to Miri's demise, was her jury management skills were non-existent. She never made someone feel comfortable going to the jury, and that was just her fault. And I think she lost because she didn't maintain close relationships like Jackson did, and Jackson had that part over her. They played very similar games. Miri made some really big moves and she killed the game. And watching the season back, if I ever play again, I want a little bit of Miri in me because I'm never going to win a Survivor game playing the way that I did. I want a little bit of Miri in me, but I want more of Jackson in me because Jackson had that one part that she didn't have, jury management.
For me, and I don't think my thing in the voting professional was in the episode, but one of the big things that was said was that Jackson was a thinker, but Miri was a doer.
Yeah.
I think that Miri was the one that actually got things done, and without Miri, Jackson wouldn't have been anything. And we saw that when they were split up because Jackson wasn't able to maneuver in the ways that Miri was, and he wasn't able to make his way into the alliance to the point that he almost got voted out. If he would have lost that immunity, he would have even made the merge. And so I was able to see that, and I know you were too. So that I don't know how that influenced your vote, but I knew that was part of it. Just seeing his fumbles, and he made a lot of mistakes or a lot of things where that didn't make sense, or why would you do that? Whereas Miri, when she was separate, was seemingly dominating a lot of the votes. She knew where things were going. She voted on the right side of everything, and for me, I saw she surprised me in ways that in the game, and I think this was the perception from the beginnings, that she seemed kind of ditzy or she seemed kind of slow and that she wouldn't be on top of the game, but she was fierce. Because I met with her twice, I think, in the whole game, and every time she would be able to knock me off my feet. From the beginning of the meeting, I was just catching my breath. I was huh? How did you know that? Why did you throw me out like that? And then she's able to get stuff out of me. She's okay, bye. And then walk away. I'm what? I'm so that just really impressed me. And I know for some people that'd be oh, well, she's rude, whatever. But it just impressed me because I just didn't expect it from her.
I think the great thing about Miri's game was she knew when and who to do that to. She never came at me and knocked me off my feet and was I'm calling you out on all your BS like she did Vinny and like she did you, I guess. She very strategically did that to certain people. Miri was a great player. Obviously one of the two best in the game.
Right. And
at the time, it was a theme throughout the season was perception. Reality doesn't matter, perception is what matters. And there's a lot of confessionals throughout the season that talk about that. And if someone's perception is different than someone else's perception, then the only thing that matters is that those people are on the jury.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I do think I didn't vote for the loser, but I'm happy that I voted for her because I do think that it was important to show it was a close game. It wasn't it wasn't Jackson completely dominating Miri sucked. They both had merits to their games, and people value different things. But I do agree that jury management was really Miri's downfall. I think even though she did maintain relationships in the game, she leveraged them in ways and would kind of toss people aside.
We heard Max talk about that
right,
as well.
Exactly. Whereas I was never in that place because we were always at odds. So I never felt tossed aside because I was always gunning for her. So it's for her to do that back to me, I'm that's not surprising because I wanted her gone. And so I was fine with her bad mouthing. I was fine with her calling me out of tribal. It didn't matter to me because I was yeah, it's deserved because we were at odds. But she just impressed me so much in her game, and she surprised me in a lot of ways. Being in the game, watching back, I'm not surprised by her game because she was so fierce. But I think in the game, I just didn't expect her to be the one that was able to pull off those moves and able to maneuver her way socially. So that's kind of what I gave it to her in the end.
So we're done with the game. We've gone from start to finish, right? So take a step back. Next couple questions are kind of all encompassing. Same kind of thing to ask them next. So what should the viewers know that they didn't see? Because I can't show everything, and I want you to have an opportunity to say, here's what you didn't see about me, good or bad. Tyler, you're going to go first.
The day that sticks out to me the most in the game was the day Cal went home. I didn't go to any of my classes that day. I canceled a meeting with just a friend, and I literally put in 8 hours worth of meetings that day. It sounds so goofy and so stupid because it's a game for nothing, but I put in so much time to make sure that it wasn't me. Since I knew it was Jackson, I was oh, Vinny won't have a problem just looking it's me. So I met with everyone on the tribe one-on-one that day and in different groups, and 8 hours later, it wasn't me, and I was fine with that. I don't know if it ever was me, but part of me is man, if I don't put in that time with each person individually, then they don't feel as safe with me and I go home. So the amount of work that goes into this from every single person from 16th to 1st is like insane. Jackson says it, I think at Final 5, like, he is broken down right now, and I think everyone felt that to some extent when they were in the game. I can't imagine going, like, I only made it halfway, but I can't imagine going all the way to Final 3, Final 2, like, my grades suffered, and then when I get out of the game, the night I got voted out, I went back to my homework, or I went back to my apartment and I did homework, and actually finished it. Like, I didn't have anything going on in my mind. I was super sad to be out of the game because it was a huge, like, part of my life for that semester, but I was able to go back to a normal life, and that's because I didn't have the stress, all the anxiety that breaks you down in the game.
I think for me, I already kind of touched on this. Is just like, I know a lot of people looked at the Cal move and like voting on Cal. I was like, that was dumb. I think I already kind of explained, like, there was a reason. It wasn't just because the reason was just because like it was last second, but it wasn't just because I was like, I want Cal out. Like, if I had it my way, it would have gone differently. But I do think that that's probably the biggest thing where everyone's like, you're an idiot. I'm like, I agree, but also like, here's why I'm an idiot. Like, why it happened that way. So I think that's probably the biggest thing. But also, like, yeah, that time commitment. Like, you don't see it, like, because like it's like only an hour, but for every hour there's like 10 hours of meetings. It's like
30.
Like, I was like, oh my god, like I mean like 15 hours a week, and when I come back I'm still thinking about the game, and I'm like talking with people outside the game. I'm like, well, what do you think about this? And they're like, I don't know any of these people, shut up. And it's like, I'm like, I was crazy. I was absolutely crazy, and like everyone in the building here knew it. They were like, oh, he's the crazy survivor guy. Like I was sitting in my sitting at my study lounge, like drawing stuff on the whiteboard, like plans. I'm like, this is weird because it's like 11 p.m. on a Friday, and this is what I'm choosing to do. So like, it's just a lot, but like it's a good thing. I wasn't doing it because like I'm like going psychotic. It was because I enjoyed it so much.
It's so much fun.
Right, and it's like that made it fun because everyone was like,
yeah,
it wasn't just me,
yeah.
like me, the crazy person with the tinfoil hat. Like, it was like everyone was the crazy person with the tinfoil hat, and I think that's what made it so fun. So I think that's maybe part of it you don't see. The other thing is y'all don't know that we read your comments. I don't know if you do, because he comments back, but we read what you're saying. So don't be so mean. That's fine. It's fine though.
They're people too. And then I also asked Max, I wanted to follow up with you. And Jake, I think you've had an interesting perspective because you've been on crew for season 2, and you've kind of been able to see other people go crazy, right? And have that same kind of experience that you did. So let's talk about if you had the opportunity to play again. Would you do it? And if so, what would you do differently?
I think I would. I would, maybe not here. I think that like, especially like having my first season, like sitting there, I'm like, I'm happy with my game. And I was like, I'm good with that chapter ending. If I was offered to play again, I would say yes. But I also know like how crazy it maybe goes. Because like, this is like healthy now. Like I have like boundaries and like time to myself. But if I played again, I definitely think like the theme of like my game was like knowing when to stay and knowing when to go, and I just never went. Like I never like jumped ship. I never like gave up on like alliances when they were crumbling around me, because I was like, we can still do this. Like let's just hold on hope. And I'm like, there's only 2 of us. Like there's no way. Like 2 out of 7 is not a majority. So like it was just kind of that perception of like not realizing like, hey, this isn't gonna work. Like it's time to like move on. So I think that would be the biggest thing, is just like knowing when to reassess. And loyalty is important because like that builds trust, but like also knowing when having those loyalties is detrimental to yourself. I think that's probably what I would take away and like readjust coming back.
The same question.
Yeah, I would definitely play again. I had so much fun. I met so many cool people. I think the one thing that I wouldn't change a lot, because I was proud of how I played the game, even though it got me 8th place. But I would change, I wouldn't talk to as many people on week 1, because apparently getting to know people is bad. But I would like to take a little bit of Muri's game into myself. I'd like to be bold. I'd like to not care what people think about what I say and be confident in myself. I'd like to take Jackson's strategic game and a little bit of Vinny's strategic game, because that was something that you'd run through numbers forever. And like those rare occasions that you do go to class while you're in Survivor, like you sit in class and you think about numbers. I'd like to not take things so personally, but at the same time, like, if I did play again, all that could be thrown out the window, and I could, because I played a game I was proud of the first time, so if I play again, why not play a balls to the wall, ruthless game, and just see where that gets me. So I don't really know like what I'd change or what I'd do differently, but I have a couple ideas.
Cool. So then my last thing, obviously, season 2 is going on now, season 3 down the road and everything. So advice to people who are playing now and who will be playing in the future.
Speak up in the camera, because I feel like there's a lot of things that you can never hear me say, but
It's partially my fault too.
no, I mean, you remember my camera problems. If you're playing in the future, go all out. Part of the reason that it was so much fun for all of us was all of us bought in. No one had to tell us to buy in. Like, I mean, you told us on day one, like, this is your season, like, make what you want of it, but nobody really needed to be told that in our season. I don't think it was all of us were, let's do this, let's make it as authentic as possible. And I said that in my vote out confessional. I was like, we all took this so seriously. There wasn't a single person in the game who was like not always thinking about this, who was not, oh, well, if I go home this week, well, then maybe I can actually go out on a Friday night or something like that. It was, I don't want to go out on a Friday night. I don't want to go out on a Saturday night because I want to have to be strategizing. I want to have a tribal council. I want to have a challenge. It was so much fun because everyone took it authentic, made it authentic.
Yeah, I think being on crew and watching it now has been it's been relaxing, but also it's like interesting to watch it happen from the outside and see like the crazy people, like, and not being one of those, like, and just see like people like having meltdowns and people like, they're like, I just like think about this all the time, or like I couldn't sleep last night because like I had a nightmare about like being voted out. I'm like, I remember that, like, and I'm glad I'm not doing that. But I do think my advice to them, I think make it fun, and I also think like looking at my confessionals, I'm like, I could have been more fun, or like I could have like not like been worried about what I looked like, because I think because I worried so much about that, I came off as like not cold, but more like just calculated, or very like I have to say this because here's my strategy, and I wasn't like just reacting or like being fun, or like Max had fun confessionals. You put like a bag on his head and was being stupid. You had fun confessionals where you're just like doing stupid stuff. And I felt like I didn't, because like I was so worried about what I looked like, or like I didn't want to look like an idiot. You're gonna look like an idiot because you're playing a college survivor for 83 days on a campus, and you're voting each other out, and you're talking for 13 hours a week in meetings. Like, you're crazy already, so don't worry about that. Like,
All right, sorry for the outfit change. Some of our video got cut off, so we're gonna resume here. Just with the fan questions, since we wrapped most everything up about both your games. So, Tyler, you first. We talked a lot about it already, but we want to talk about the Cat Alliance, because the Cat Alliance is interesting in that it's very short-lived, especially after Miri plants that whole plan about pitting you and Nally against each other, right? So, did you ever attempt to reconcile that relationship with Kat, or did you ever know that anything was ever wrong with it in the first place?
In the first place, no. I didn't really know at all until I think the week I went home, or the week before I went home, I was obviously very skeptical, and I knew because Miri had told me that they wanted me out, but I didn't really feel like I needed to reconcile anything with them in the game, because I was so gung-ho and actually trying to get to Final Six with the Savage Six, and I was totally fine with that. So I didn't feel like I needed to reconcile anything in the game, but outside of the game, Kelsey, Ali, and I have talked a lot, and I mean, I'm fine with both of them. I hope they're fine with me. I hope they realize that I'm not fake, or I'm not, I don't know, that I'm just not mean, because I'm not, and I was who I was in the game because that's who I am in real life. So yeah.
Okay, cool. Jake, I'm going to you. Looking at your game, you've been referred to many people, both during the game and after the game, as Jake the Snake. So let's touch on that. Do you think, after watching everything back, that you deserve that title?
I think in a lot of ways, yes, for sure. Like, I'm looking back, and the one thing that sticks out the most is probably me telling Will to play as Idol. I think that's obviously a very sneaky thing to do, because I came to you guys and you were like, let's vote out Will, and then last second I decided against it, and so yeah, it was kind of sneaky. I think post-merge I really didn't have much of a game in general, but also I I don't think I did anything that was very snaky because I was just doing what everyone else was doing, talking to people, trying to get where people's heads were at. But I think just because of that one move, I had that reputation. It was hard to shake it, and especially like once that gets planted, like it's really hard to like change people's perception of what you are in the game. So I do think in a lot of ways, yeah, I was a snake, and if I played again, I would probably be a little bit more, not honest, but more like firm in what I want to do. Like instead of like being so wishy-washy, because I think that's what kind of made me get that reputation.
It also rhymes, which is nice.
Right, yeah, I think it's fitting, yeah.
Okay. So Tyler, then another question that someone had for you was, you had a confessional with your mom, right? Mom makes the edit. And are you ready to play in the inevitable Survivor Time and Change Blood versus Water season alongside your mom?
Yes. So my mom did make an appearance, which she was very happy about. She wasn't really expecting it, and when she popped up on the screen at home, she immediately texted me. She was like, "Oh my gosh, that's crazy! I can't believe I made it." But if there ever were a Survivor Time and Change Blood versus Water, I'd have to say that I'd play with my dad. And I think my mom would be okay with that, but my dad in the family is the bigger Survivor fan than my mom. And so he always watches every week and will text me his thoughts and we'll talk about the game, and whenever I'm home we'll watch together. So I think I'd rather have played with my dad just because it would mean more to him than my mom.
Okay. So then Jake, another one for you. Fans want to know, we have this vote where Will plays his idol and you guys target Cal, right? And one of the most questionable decisions of the game, right? Because you could have gone for Tyler, could have gone for Vinny. So talk to me, do you stand by that Cal vote?
In a perfect world, hell no, I would not voted for Cal. My vote would have been going to Vinny. Because at that time, I know Will and Vinny were really tight, and I wanted to work with Will, and I knew that Vinny was using him the same way that I wanted to use him. Also, I know Will was gunning for you, Tyler, more than Vinny in the Kalabu group, and since Jackson had muted you, you could vote for him. So before the vote, their idea was like, let's just throw our votes at Tyler and just see what happens. And I was very against that. I was like, no, I think that we should just stick with the Cal vote. But then once I kind of had that idea of like playing the idol, Will and I were like trying to like tell each other without talking, so we couldn't read each other's lips. I was like trying to say Vinny, he was trying to say Tyler. We both couldn't read lips. We're like, what are you saying? Like, are you saying the same thing I am? I was like, well, I don't know. The only name that we knew for sure we both were to put down at one point was Cal, so we both did. If in a perfect world, Vinny would have gone home, but I mean, it is what it is, and we just did what we had to do. Because it would have been way worse if I would have put down like Vinny, and it would have gone to a 1-1-1 between me, Cal, and Vinny, and then at the revote, who knows what would have happened. I could have gone home for telling Will plays idol. So I'm glad at least that didn't happen, because then I would be the stupid player.
Of Tyler and Jackson.
Yeah. Will would have gone, or no, because Will would have had to play idol, so it would have been between. Oh, you're right.
It would have been Cal, Vinny, and myself. At that point, I don't know what would have happened.
That's fun to think about.
Because at the point we didn't know that you had told Will, I was still under the impression that Vinny told Will until
So Vinny would have gone
about
home.
an hour after tribal. Because I had this confessional that didn't make the edit where I was like basically crying, not crying literally, but like I was just laying on the table, like my game is ruined, my path to winning just got so much harder because I was convinced that Vinny did it. So I really don't know who would have gone home. But I think it probably would have been, me and Jackson wouldn't have had any time to talk, but I probably would have tried to vote out probably Cal.
So
I think Cal probably said, I don't think it would have been you because I didn't know it was you.
But do you think that Jackson would have thought it was me? Because I kind of think that he would. And then he'd probably like do his traditional Jackson stand up, says what he thinks, and then
Would you have allowed that? Because if Jackson did that, I just would have voted whoever Jackson did.
No, so what would have happened is you would have gone immediately into a revote, so there wouldn't have been an opportunity to discuss.
It would have been the two of us voting? And Will.
And Will.
Yeah.
So I think Will would have voted probably for, oh God, I don't know.
I know, Will scares me. I don't like thinking about
It's
it.
fun to think about, it didn't happen. All right, so moving on. Tyler, Jackson in his post-game confession, or in his post-game interview, said that from the very beginning, you actually did want Allie out, and you had a conversation with him off camera that you said, I want her to be the first in the 7-6 to go.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about that.
Yeah, so all credit goes to Muri for doing that. That was a huge move in the game to pit me and Allie against each other. But ironically, she thought that she made it up when she really didn't. It was definitely something that was real. I never voiced to her, but I did voice to Jackson, I did voice to Vinny. So early on in the game, me and me and Jackson, I remember that conversation more vividly. I just was in bed one night and I gave him a phone call and I was like, I've been thinking way too much, I can't sleep, let's just talk about this. So I told him like, I want to get down to the Savage 6. This I think was probably week 1 or week 2. So I wanted to get down to the Savage 6, but I wanted Allie to be the first one out. I couldn't fully trust her. Like I felt like I could trust my core 4 of me, Vinny, Jackson, and Yuri. I knew, at least I thought I could trust them. But I couldn't trust Allie because she would never look at me in the eyes. She doesn't make good eye contact in conversations. So, and besides that, I knew she was an athlete. I knew she was going to do well at challenges. So I wanted her out at 6. And that was something I did tell Jackson. I did tell Vinny a lot. But obviously that didn't happen.
Cool. So, Jake, the last one that I have for you is, we talked about like what was your game post-marriage, and you may not know exactly, and it's because a lot of people didn't really see it, right? You were kind of waiting for people to come to you. So what is one move that you think you initiated in the game that was good for you?
I really am not as bad that I can say. I really don't know, because I think post-merge I really did not have any footing going, especially after the max vote. Like when I was completely left out of the loop, like I had no footing in the game. I really didn't have anyone to trust. Will didn't really trust me because he went and threw me under the bus to Yuri and Jackson. So I really didn't have a lot of say. So a lot of my game post-merge was just kind of listening and like trying to like figure out what people's heads were at. I think if anything, like me like talking to Allie a little bit about Tyler throwing Kelsey's name out when the week that he went home, but even then that was kind of already set in motion without me. But like I think that like me telling her kind of like helped, like when I was like, I'm fine with it at this point if that's what you're thinking, but like here's what Tyler like and I talked about. Right, exactly.
Wait,
so like,
you told her about that?
yeah.
I don't even remember telling you about that.
Yeah, because we talked about it like right after she got immunity. We went like to your place and we were like talking. Because you said that we never met, but we met and like I was like, I guess at this point like if it's not me or Will, like the only other name I can really think of that makes sense is Kelsey. And we kind of did the same thing where like I was like, I don't want this person. The only person's name that was left was Kelsey.
And at the end of the day, all of it was cut from the edit because it was insignificant and
it didn't matter.
They were targeting you anyway.
Right. So like that didn't really, exactly. So like me doing that didn't really change anything because that was already set in motion. So I think a lot of my moves.
Telling Will to play the idol was a move.
Right. That is a move. But I think a lot of my game was pre-merge, and then I think the swap just really like messed things up for me with Elizabeth going home like the first vote after the swap, and then Max just kind of like kept putting his foot in his mouth like tribal after tribal and making public enemy number 1 come merge. So it was just like a lot of things that I couldn't really control. So unfortunately, I don't really know if I have any moves, which isn't a good thing in a game where you're trying to make moves to win the jury's vote. But I mean, I got cut earlier, so it didn't really matter. I didn't have a chance to plead my case. So.
And then the last one that I had submitted for Tyler. Tyler, people kind of criticized your performance in that tribal council where you did go home because you were worried going in. It didn't seem as if you were speaking up for yourself. So let's talk through that night. Do you feel like, why didn't you put up a fight at the tribal council, or did you and just people didn't see it?
Yeah, so I knew I was going home, actually. I knew I was going home at 8 the week before when I won immunity because Kelsey told me, she said, if you didn't win, you were going home. So I knew that there was 5 votes at 9 to send me home. And I knew that one of those votes were Max. So then that means 4 of those people are still around. That's obviously Will and Jake, probably Allie, and then that was either Kelsey or Vinny. I didn't think it was Kelsey because I didn't think that she would tell me that I was going home if she was going to vote me out. It turns out that I still had 5 people against me at 8, which didn't really, obviously, didn't play in my favor. So I knew I was going home. It was definitely like set in stone knowing that I was going home that whole week when Jake didn't call me, because like when Jake doesn't reach out to you in Survivor for a week, like you know you're going home. I knew I had lost Vinny, but I actually did set this plan that we were just talking about to try and get Kelsey out, because I knew it couldn't be Allie. I knew everyone would be worried that Will had an idol. I wanted to work with Jake, so it wasn't him, and it couldn't be Yuri, Jackson, or Vinny because I knew that I couldn't get further in the game without their votes. So the only person left was Kelsey. And when I talked to Vinny, Jackson, and Muri about this, the first thing I said when I prefaced this conversation was, I know this is gonna suck because I really don't want to do it. And I know that if I don't want to do it, you guys probably aren't gonna want to do it, but we have to vote up Kelsey. And I knew that if we voted out Kelsey, me, Miri, Jackson, and Vinny, the four of us threw 4 votes at her, Will and Jake voted for me, and hopefully we had convinced Allie and Kelsey to stay with the plan to vote one of you, stay with the plan. That never was really real. Then our 4 votes would get rid of Kelsey, and then at final 7 we had 4, and we could work our way all the way down to 4, which at the end of the day would have been better for me, and it would have been better for Vinny because he would have gotten 5th. He would have gotten 4th, 3rd, 2nd, or 1st. And so yeah, long story short, I knew I was going home. I did try to set a plan in motion that didn't end up working, but at Tribal, I was just so exhausted after putting in, I was only in for 45 days, but after putting in 45 days of work, where all day, that's what you're thinking about for 45 days, that's a long time to be like constantly worried that people are lying to you. And with all the talking that was going on, all the whispering, I didn't know what people were trying to say. And I wasn't gonna stand up and blow up everyone's game, because if somehow I was gonna be safe, which I knew I wasn't gonna be, the little part of me was like, oh man, somehow if I make it through this week, then I don't want every single person that I just trashed to just look at me and be like, all right, he's gotta go, he's gone. So the benefits to trashing everyone and throwing everyone under the bus didn't seem like it didn't seem like that was the right decision at the time.
Yeah. So, with that, that's all I have for question was. So, if you guys have any final thoughts that you want to say to people who are watching this, whatever you want to do, this is your time to do so. Because this is basically your final moment to kind of close the book on your Survivor Time and Change chapter. So,
Yeah, I think it's just been crazy, like being part of this first season and just having such an impact on how this game will play in the future, and just seeing how excited people are to watch it has been really rewarding. Even though it's like weird to see people talk about you, like, and they're like people, strangers across the world, like people in Spain and people in France are like watching you and talking about you, which has been weird. But it's been like really cool to be part of that first season. So to everyone that's been watching, thanks so much for all your support, and thanks for like talking about it and talking in the comments or talking on Reddit. It's been really cool to watch all that. And a big shout out, I guess, to a lot of you don't see the amount of work that the crew and exec puts in. If you think that we were crazy, spent a lot of time, like this guy like spent like double the amount of time. So like the amount of work that you put in to make this organization a success, and everyone in crew and exec, I think it needs to be applauded, because that's why this first season has been so successful. And to be part of it to still be part of crew this season, and hopefully for my last semester here, I think that it's just been really cool to be part of this and help to continue growing this organization. So stay tuned for season 2 in the fall of 2018, question mark.
we'll see.
Yeah, I guess my final thoughts would just be echoing Jake's. Like, thanks to everyone who's watched and thanks to everyone who's commented. It has been kind of a surreal experience just to have people see raw footage of people and their opinion of you, because some brutal things were said about both of us from a few people. So that has been surreal, but it's also been kind of weird to see like people just commenting who don't even know us. Some things have been good, some things have been bad, but you take everything with a grain of salt and you just realize that like these people don't know who I am, they don't know my character, they don't know my true intentions or everything that I did in the game. So it doesn't really matter what you guys think of us, but we appreciate you commenting, because it's been a blast. Like, this was by far one of the best experiences I had in college, and probably my life up to this point. This has been so unique. You never get this experience in a classroom, and it really develops you into a better young professional, a better young man in our case. And I've had a blast getting to know all 16 people, even the crew, the exec, some of whom have become some of my best friends. And yeah, I'm really sad that it's coming to an end, but I look forward to continuing to be involved with the organization, seeing future seasons play out, and the people in this organization are going to be friends for life. So at the end of the day, I might have lost, but I got some like really, really awesome friends out of it.
All right, so Jake, Tyler, thank you guys. You saw Max already left. Thank you to Max if he's watching this. Thank you to everyone. This is our final postseason interview that we'll be posting. So with that, we've officially brought an end to Survivor Time and Change Buckeye Battles, the first ever season here in Ohio State. And with that, I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you to all of you for supporting us, and I hope that you stick with us for seasons to come. Thanks again, guys, and go Bucks.
Go Bucks.